A very good evening to all the panelists. And what I'll be talking about today is about femtoLASIK. And I think what femtolasers did to ophthalmology is what smartphones did to the mobile technology. The femtosecond laser is basically an infrared laser using 1053 nanometers wavelength with a very ultra short pulse duration of 10 raised to minus 15. And that's where the name comes as far as the femtosecond is concerned. It has a very high repetition rate ranging from 15 with the earlier machines to up to even 500 kilohertz and a spot size of 3 microns. So what exactly this achieves is a very small focused delivery of a laser energy at a very precise place in the cornea, producing very less collateral damage to the surrounding tissue and thereby minimizing the damage to the cornea.
Yes, Sean?
Is the slide moving? Yeah.
No,
The principle of femtosecond laser is photodisruption. Here, when the laser energy is delivered to the tissue, it is absorbed by the tissue and results in plasma formation. An expansion of this plasma creates cavitation bubbles, which separates the tissue plane. Hence, this formation of carbon dioxide and water, and this helps in creating a very clean cleavage plane to lift the corneal flap. This is how the femtolaser actually works on the eye. And you can see as the suction ring is applanated onto the corneal surface, you have the docking cone, and then the laser fires. In FS200, this is a raster pattern, where each of these laser beam is creating cavitation bubbles at a focused, predetermined depth in the cornea. And this runs throughout the bed of the interface, as well as the side cut for the lifting of the flap. There is a very precise engineering in this and a very defined line separation and spot separation between these laser pulses, which actually enables a very smooth interface. It minimizes the amount of interbridges and allows a very clean flap lift with minimal tissue damage and inflammation in the postoperative period. Another thing that we need to know is that most of these femtosecond lasers have a number attached to this. And it's very important to understand that the repetition rate or the rate of firing of these pulses is indicative of that. For example, for the femtosecond 200, it is around 200 kilohertz. VisuMax is around 500 kilohertz. And with the Zymer, it goes to even up to 10 megahertz. The advantage with a higher firing rate is that a higher repetition rate produces a much lesser amount of pulse energy. This is much more softer to the cornea. There's lesser amount of heat production. And the procedure time is also much shortened. The femtosecond laser was approved by the FDA for LASIK flap creation in 2001. We started with the AMO IFS laser, which was 60 kilohertz laser, and then moved on to the Wavelight 200 and the VisuMax 500. And now with the Zymer Femto LDV 8, in addition to the corneal procedures, it also enables us to do a femtosecond assisted cataract surgery as well. So the main difference between this pulse energy, why are we looking at 10 raised to minus 15, is mainly because at a much lower pulse energy of a microsecond laser, the spot size is much larger. It has a very high pulse energy, and this produces a lot of collateral damage and heat in the cornea, which is extremely minimized by this ultra short duration pulse, a very low pulse energy, and a very high pulse frequency. This is how fast the laser is actually in the human eye. And this is a real-time video. I'll just forward it right up to the point of the laser delivery. Here, after the complete applanation occurs, the entire flap creation takes hardly around 40 seconds. It starts with the canal formation, and then the interface bubbles are being created. And once that is complete, you have the side cuts being created, and that's the end of it. It actually takes hardly around 7 seconds for completion of the flap. As we discussed earlier, as compared to the microkeratome, which created meniscus flaps, which were thinner on the center and thicker on the periphery, with the femtosecond laser, you have much planar flaps with a vertical or even an angled side cut. You can pre-program the depth at which you want the flap to be created. The predictability and safety is extremely good. And in several cases where you may want to avoid a corneal scar on the periphery, you can even reposition your hinge so that you do not get any vertical gas breakthrough. The flap centration is another advantage, that even after the docking, the machine would overlap the image of the flap onto the pupil, and if it is not centered on the pupil, you could move this a few millimeters to the left, right, above or below within the applanating ring. So that allows a lot of flexibility. Here again, the femtocanal plays a very important role. The femtocanal actually provides a pathway, and this is right before the flap dissection starts, for the excess amount of cavitation energy, the gas bubbles, to escape out of the flap rather than dissipate in the other stromal layers, giving rise to an OBL. A very smooth dissection allows a very easy lift of the flap, and it minimizes the interface bridges which may be created if you have excessive opaque bubble layer. Just mentioning about OBL in my next slide is that this is the most common occurrence in femtosecond lasers. It was much more often earlier with the lower repetition rate lasers with the AMO machines, but now with the Wavelight FS200, the VisuMax, the OBLs are much lesser. Here, the gas bubbles actually dissect deeper above and below the intended plane. This gives rise to a lot of tissue bridges and may result a lot of difficulty in dissection. You'll have eye tracking problems because the tracker can no longer recognize the pupil, and sometimes you may have to keep the patient outside the operating room and bring him later once the OBL has reduced. So one of the ways to reduce OBL is, as seen over here, is that this is the laser plane in which the bubbles are being created. And this is the canal which connects the plane to the external area up to the limbus, allowing the gas to escape. And their studies, they found that keeping a denser canal line with a 2.5 spot separation and a wider canal width helped to reduce the OBL intraoperatively. So we've already gone through the complications of microkeratome, and here I think femtosecond laser has made it really life easier for us. We no longer have to worry about intraoperative problems like incomplete flaps, buttonholes, and intraoperatively, even if you have a suction loss, you can still continue, read off the patient and go ahead with it with the femtosecond laser in the flap creation. Postoperatively, epithelial ingrowth is minimized in femtosecond laser with a good side cut angle and a good flap adhesion in the periphery. In the earlier reports in 2010, we did have the femtosecond lasers producing a lot of diffuse lamellar keratitis, transient light sensitivity syndromes, and these were attributed to the laser causing collateral damage in the cornea with activation of the stromal keratocytes. Now with the newer lasers, the outcomes are equally comparable as far as very minimal postoperative inflammatory complications in the cornea. And with the recent comparison, the new femtosecond laser models allow much lower energy delivery to the cut flap, and the overall inflammatory response is not significantly different from the microkeratome. So in addition to all the intraoperative advantages it offers, postoperative complications are also minimized. Well, the complications which can occur intraoperatively are suction loss, incomplete flap, challenges in docking, OBL, as I showed earlier, iris recognition issues. But all of this can actually be managed. You can go ahead with a complete procedure on the same day, and you will not have to postpone the surgery or defer it for some other day. Postoperatively, we can still see a diffuse lamellar keratitis. This again is due to interface debris. If you have allowed too much of debris accumulating under the flap, or meibomian gland secretions, transient light sensitivity syndrome, and central toxic keratopathy. Again, diffuse lamellar keratitis, as covered by Dr. Shroff, is that the interface, it's an inflammatory condition where you have activation of the stromal keratocytes due to interface debris, while central toxic keratopathy is a non-inflammatory condition known to occur due to apoptosis of the stromal keratocytes. Again, flap folds and microstriae can occur in thin flaps and small hinges, and Dr. Shroff has covered this very elaborately. So the overall advantages of a femtolaser, you have fewer flap-related complications, the hinge position flexibility, a lower incidence of epithelial ingrowth, less variability in flap thickness, precise control of the flap diameter and hinge width. You can have a much larger flap diameter and hyperopes, improved visual outcomes. Thinner flaps, even up to 90 microns, can be feasible and highly predictable. Stronger flap adherence, probably due to the inflammation at the edge of the flap, less increase in intraocular pressure, less hemorrhage from the limbal vessels, and ability to retreat immediately, even if there is an incomplete femtosecond laser ablation. So I'll quickly run through this video. I have around 40 seconds remaining, just to show how easy it is to dock. Here down, you can see the interface being locked into the femtosecond device, and here you have the patient eye being locked in. It's a very user-friendly procedure. I'm working on the FS200, and once you have put the speculum in and allowed adequate scleral exposure on either side of the cornea. You allow the cone to dock onto the surface of the vacuum, and the laser would hardly take around 7 seconds to get completed. One advantage I may have not gone into details is about the double suction that is one of the safety mechanisms. So here you have the outer ring, and as you put the suction on, you'll have a green light coming up on suction 1. So once this turns green, then you dock with the central cone. This applanates the cornea. This allows the machine to calibrate at what depth the cavitation bubbles are going to form. And once the cone has applanated the cornea adequately, you can see that this entire area will be your zone of application of applanation, where you can clearly see on the monitor. And then once the suction 2 turns green, then you go ahead and fire the laser. Just another 20 seconds, ma'am, and the video is over. So the entire flap making would hardly take around 40 seconds, and the laser would go on for around 7 seconds for the actual completion of the flap. So we have a green suction 2 as well. This is where you can move this flap if it is not centered on the pupil. The canal length would be around 0.7 to 0.9 to ensure that it communicates with the limbus and you do not get too much of gas bubbles in the peripheral limbus or in the superior part of the cornea. So now we've started with the canal. You have the raster pattern. And once this completes the interface, you will have the side cut of the bed and the procedure is complete. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Sean.